On a gray morning in Paris, near the end of the 1980s, an old man walks out of a corporate headquarters for the very last time. His name is not the one written in gold above the door, but that name, the one every wealthy traveler would recognize, he had spent 20 years making worth a fortune. He built this company into a giant and has just been forced out of it completely, with no way back. Inside those offices, no one will say out loud what has really happened, because the truth is stranger than a simple defeat. This man was not brought down by a rival, a bank, or an enemy army. He was brought down by someone he personally invited through the front door. This is the story of Louis Vuitton, a name built by a penniless boy who walked to Paris with nothing. A name that would grow into an empire worth close to $500 billion. And the dark secret buried at the center of it, the day the most famous family in luxury lost their own name and handed it away with their own hands. To understand how that could ever happen, we have to go back more than a century and a half, to a cold village high in the mountains of eastern France. Because this is not really a story about fashion. It is a story about how the very thing you build to keep yourself safe can become the thing that destroys you. Louis Vuitton was born in the spring of 1821 in a small farming village called Anchaille, high in the Jura Mountains near the Swiss border. His father worked the land, his mother made hats, and life there was hard and narrow and cold. When Louis was 10 years old, his mother died. His father married again, and the boy and his cold new stepmother never learned to live under one roof. By the age of 13, Louis had decided that whatever waited out in the world could not be worse than the home he was trapped in. So one morning, he simply left. No money, no plan, no goodbye. Ahead of him lay a journey of more than 200 miles, on foot, all the way to Paris. It took him over 2 years, walking the roads of France and taking odd jobs to feed himself along the way. He was still only a teenager when he reached the capital, and he arrived with nothing in his pockets but a single silent promise. He would never be poor again. In Paris, Louis found work as an apprentice to a craftsman who packed the belongings of the rich. It sounds humble, but it was a genuine art, and Louis had steady hands and a clever mind. His reputation grew until it reached the highest household in all of France. The wife of the Emperor Napoleon III, the Empress Eugénie, chose Louis as her personal packer, the one man she trusted to fold and protect the most beautiful gowns in Paris. That single appointment opened every door in the city. Suddenly, the aristocracy of Europe all wanted the young man the Empress trusted. In 1854, Louis opened a workshop of his own, and then he made one simple change that would quietly transform travel forever. In those days, every trunk was built with a rounded top, which meant they could not be stacked. Louis built a trunk with a flat lid, light and strong, and easy to pile high in a carriage or a ship's hold. It was a small idea, and it made him wealthy. But that success cast a long shadow, one that would follow his name for the next 150 years. Others began to copy him. Louis Vuitton died in 1892, respected and rich, and the company passed to his son, Georges. If Louis had built the workshop, Georges would build the empire. He had a sharper, more modern head for business, and he understood something his father had only sensed. The name itself was the real treasure, and it had to be protected and carried to every corner of the earth. To fight the flood of copies, Georges designed a pattern so distinctive it would be almost impossible to fake cleanly. In 1896, in the family workshops at Asnieres outside Paris, he created the interlocking initials and little flower shapes that the whole world now knows on sight. At its heart, that famous design was an anti-counterfeit weapon. It became the most recognized symbol in the history of luxury. And still the copies came. In fact, those two letters would become the most counterfeited symbol in the world, faked so many times that the imitations now outnumber the real ones many times over. The lesson of the family never changed. The more the world loved the name, the harder the world tried to steal it. Georges was also a showman. He built a lock so secure that he publicly challenged the greatest escape artist alive, Harry Houdini, to break free from a Vuitton trunk fitted with it. Houdini, who had escaped chains, prison cells, and sealed tanks of water, never once accepted. Under Georges, the name crossed oceans. A grand store opened on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, and Vuitton trunks traveled the world on the great ocean liners of the age. Then the company passed down again, to Georges' son, Gaston Louis Vuitton, who took control in the 1930s. Gaston carried the family through the darkest years of the century. 2 world wars swept across France in his lifetime. In the first, one of his own brothers was killed in the fighting, and of all of Georges' children, only Gaston lived to see the peace. In the second, the country was occupied, and the business endured the same brutal years as every French company. And still the name survived. Through revolution, invasion, looting, and grief, 5 generations of Vuittons had guarded the name and passed it on, unbroken, to the next pair of hands. They believed, with very good reason, that Louis Vuitton was untouchable. And then, after Gaston, control of the company passed to a man who was not born of Vuitton at all. Before we go any further, one quick thing. If you are enjoying this story, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps this channel keep making these films, and I am grateful you are here. And if you would rather listen on a walk or a drive, every episode is on Spotify, with the link in the description below. Thank you. Now, the man who took over next would build Louis Vuitton bigger than the family had ever dreamed. And without ever meaning to, he set the trap that would finally destroy them. When Gaston died in 1970, leadership passed to his son-in-law, Henri Racamier, who had married into the Vuitton family. And Racamier turned out to be brilliant. He saw a company selling beautiful luggage to a tiny circle of the very rich and asked one simple question: why not sell to the whole world? He transformed everything. He opened Vuitton's own stores, city after city, instead of letting other shops sell the goods, controlling the name from the workshop bench to the shop window. The profits exploded. Under Racamier, Louis Vuitton became one of the most profitable luxury houses on earth, and at the height of its fame, those 2 letters were being sold in grand stores on nearly every wealthy avenue in the world. But a company this rich and this famous was also a target, and Racamier knew it. He wanted protection. And so, in 1987, came the decision that would change everything. Louis Vuitton merged with the champagne and cognac giant Moët Hennessy, the maker of Moët champagne and Hennessy cognac, to create a brand new company. They called it LVMH. On paper, it looked like a masterstroke, the largest luxury group ever assembled, built to be too big for any outsider to ever swallow. But behind closed doors, it was, by many accounts, a marriage of convenience rather than love. Racamier, who ran the Vuitton side, and Alain Chevalier, who ran the Moët Hennessy side, simply could not stand one another. Two proud men from two different worlds, luggage and champagne, now locked inside one company and fighting for control from the very first day. The empire meant to protect Louis Vuitton had a crack running right through its foundation. And as the feud grew uglier, Racamier made a fateful choice. He decided he needed an outside ally, someone strong and ambitious enough to help him crush his rival inside the group. So he went looking for a powerful young partner. It would prove to be the single greatest mistake of his life. The ally Henry Racamier chose was a quiet, elegant, and ferociously ambitious young financier named Bernard Arnault. To understand the storm about to hit the Vuitton family, you have to understand who this man was. A few years earlier, in 1984, Arnault had been a 35-year-old property developer with enormous ambition and a very cold eye for a deal. He had heard the French government was desperate to offload Boussac, a bankrupt textile empire full of closing factories and thousands of workers. Almost no one wanted it. But Arnault had spotted one thing buried inside that failing group. A single glittering jewel. The legendary fashion house, Christian Dior. So he made his move. He put in $15 million of his own money, borrowed the rest, and bought the entire Boussac empire for the ceremonial price of 1 single franc. Then he did something that stunned the country. To turn the business around, he laid off around 9,000 workers in the space of 2 years, and the French press gave him his first chilling nickname. They called him the Terminator. This was the man Henry Racamier now invited into the house of Louis Vuitton, believing he had found a shield. Racamier suggested Arnault buy a large stake in the group, which, combined with the Vuitton family's own shares, would hand the two of them control. He thought he was recruiting a loyal soldier. He had in fact handed a key to a man who had quietly come for the entire house. And then, in July of 1988, Bernard Arnault made his move, and it was breathtaking in its nerve. Instead of quietly backing Racamier as promised, he joined forces with the Irish brewing giant Guinness. And together, the two of them poured $1.5 billion into the market, buying up roughly a quarter of the entire LVMH group in a single, stunning strike. In one moment, the man Racamier had invited in as a junior partner had become one of the most powerful shareholders in the whole company. Racamier finally understood what he had let in, but by then, it was already far too late. What followed was one of the most ruthless corporate wars that France had ever seen. Racamier, realizing he had been betrayed, fought back the only way he knew how. He began buying shares in a frenzy, pushing his own control up to nearly a third of the group, desperate to stop the man he had brought in. But he was fighting an opponent with deeper pockets and far colder nerves. Arnault struck back without hesitation. In just 3 days, he spent another $600 million buying stock, seizing so much of the company that no one could possibly catch him. Then, in January of 1989, he spent $500 million more, until he controlled more than 43% of the entire empire. The battle raged through boardrooms and courtrooms for months, a savage war of lawsuits, shareholder votes, and raw financial power. It grew so brutal that even the president of France, François Mitterrand, spoke out in public, warning the takeover was too savage for French capitalism. But nothing could stop it now. By the end of 1989, the courts ruled in Arnault's favor, and he was named chairman and chief executive of LVMH. And then came the final blow. One by one, Arnault purged the old guard. Alain Chevalier, the man who had built Moët Hennessy, lost his company, and Henri Racamier, the man who had personally opened the door and invited Arnault inside, was stripped of all his power and thrown out of the business entirely. Now, at last, we are back where this story began. That gray morning in Paris. The old man walking out of the headquarters for the last time is Henri Racamier. The company is Louis Vuitton, and the man who forced him onto the street was the very ally he had chosen himself. He had brought in a shield to protect the family, and the shield had swallowed the family whole. From that hostile takeover, Bernard Arnault built something almost beyond imagination. In the years that followed, the value of LVMH did not simply rise. It multiplied, growing roughly 15 times over. He bought house after house, name after name, gathering the greatest brands on earth under his control, from Christian Dior to Bulgari to Givenchy, until the group held more than 70 famous names. No one in the history of luxury had ever gathered so much grandeur under one roof. Today, LVMH is worth close to $500 billion, one of the most valuable companies in all of Europe. And Bernard Arnault has stood more than once as the richest man on the entire planet. And sitting right at the heart of that vast empire, the single most valuable jewel in the crown is Louis Vuitton. The name still travels the world. It still hangs in gold above the finest streets on earth, from Paris to Tokyo to New York. But it no longer belongs to the family that made it. Henri Racamier, the man whose vision had turned a maker of trunks into a global giant, spent his final years outside the house he had rebuilt, remembered by many simply as the man who let the wolf in. And the descendants of Louis Vuitton, some of them still craftsmen, still carrying that world-famous surname, kept their pride and their name, but never again their power. Think of what was truly lost here. An empire built by a poor boy who walked to Paris with nothing, protected through 2 world wars, guarded, unbroken, across 5 generations of one family. And in the end, it was not taken by an army, and it was not lost in a crash. It was given away in a single trusting decision to a stranger the family invited through their own front door. That is the dark secret behind the shining stores and the golden letters. The most famous name in all of luxury is a name that its own family no longer owns. But here is the thought I want to leave you with. Louis Vuitton is not the exception. It is the rule. Almost every great name you admire, every logo you trust, is hiding a story like this one. A betrayal, a downfall, a secret the family would give anything to keep buried. On this channel, we drag those stories into the light, one name at a time. and one of them is already waiting for you right now. A fashion dynasty even more famous than this one, where the man who ran it was shot dead outside his own office, on the orders of someone who carried his very same name. If this story gripped you, that one will haunt you. So do two quick things. Leave a like and subscribe so you are always here the moment we open the next name. Then let that story begin, because once you have seen what truly hides behind these logos, you will never look at them the same way again.